So, hello everyone, and welcome to today's seminar. My name is Bridget Menya, Research Associate on the MECS program at Loughborough University, and I will be the moderator for today's session. So, just to say that our sessions are recorded, so if you have any concerns, please mute yourself and participate using the chat box if you so wish. I'm not sure if there are any first timers, but if you are, the MECS Seminar is a fortnightly event that seeks to build a community for MECS researchers and share experiences with designing and implementing different methodologies across the program. Today's seminar session is a bit different, but we are looking forward to it being very interactive and interesting. And today's around networking, and we have our expert in the person of Dr. Nick Russo to share some experiences with us. And so we can eventually all walk away better networkers than we came. So before Nick takes over, just put any comments in the comments and questions in the chat box, and that will be addressed during the Q&A session. So without much ado, Nick, over to you.
Thank you. As ever, I feel like being referred to as an expert puts me on a dangerous position. I kind of have a level of experience that I'm here to share, and I hope you're all open to sharing your experiences as well. So I just want to kind of talk a bit about my experience. Oh, shut up, Siri. Talk about some of the things I do mainly with LinkedIn, but I don't really know what others on this group kind of would find most helpful. So I'm happy to be kind of flexible, and if you can kind of chip in and comment and add your thoughts as we go through. So the first thing I guess to say is on social media platforms, there are a great many of them. I'm focusing on LinkedIn today. That's what I use for most of my sort of professional networking. But oops, why has that come out there? There's a whole bunch of other ones that they're appearing in funny orders. So I'd be interested in people saying which ones do they use predominantly in the work domain. Does anyone like to comment? Or any that are not on this list, indeed?
Well, I would go for LinkedIn. Karen?
Okay.
Anyone you use particularly?
Maybe you don't use social media. That's an interesting thing. It's possible, I suppose.
This is Nigel.
Hello, Nigel.
Nigel Monk. I don't use social media at all, other than emails. LinkedIn exists, but I wouldn't use it in a social media sense much. I vaguely watch YouTube's if I can avoid using the YouTube channel. But you know, that's me. So I'm all ears on this one, Nick.
Okay, great.
A few responses have come in, Nick. Oh wow, there's a flood of them. So I have WhatsApp, there's ResearchGate, there's YouTube, yeah, LinkedIn as well. So I guess quite a few.
Okay, good. So a range of experience out there. That's what I kind of expected. And I think I think of some of these. I don't really think of some of these as kind of social media platforms. More like Nigel said, as kind of means of communication. You know, WhatsApp is very much a kind of person-to-person thing rather than a sort of putting stuff out there kind of thing. So I guess that's the next steps to say, you know, these different platforms do have very different users and user profiles. I gathered some stats. I won't expect you to read these all, but you know, there are ones out there that are used by certain demographics, and if you're trying to reach a certain group or communicate with a certain group, you'd use different ones. And I tend to use Facebook for personal stuff and LinkedIn for professional. But I think the Facebook demographic is older now. It's not, young people don't use it so much. What I find hard is kind of moving between those platforms, because there are a lot of groups on Facebook which are sort of informal groups of people with a kind of professional interest around one of my interests, which is edible insects. So I kind of have to be active on that, even though I tend to use it primarily for personal stuff and promoting my weird and wonderful lifestyle. So that's just to say there's a kind of variety. I don't know if people haven't got much experience of these, it's probably interesting to hear from those that do, to say why they've chosen what they've chosen, and what they think works particularly well for them. Because I think it's easy to look at these things from the outside, and I'm not a Twitter user to any extent at all, although I have got an account there, and I find it a sort of bewildering space that I've never really understood how to kind of make use of. It feels overwhelming immediately, so that may be what other people feel. So I thought I'd set out some of the things that I find I make use of social media for, and see if that resonates with people again. So I find it's a source of stimulation, because there's kind of stuff that's coming out of there all the time that might give me new ideas or fresh insights, or make me aware of other projects that are going on. Certainly in areas that are of interest, it's a way of keeping abreast of things that are coming up. The challenge is, I say, is kind of the overload factor. The flip side, obviously, is that one can promote something that one is doing, an event or a publication or something, to a kind of wide and diverse and disparate audience, or you can be sharing information within your own network, using it to kind of let people know that you just put out something, or there's an event or a development that's coming up. So you can be more targeted. Obviously, it can be a way of raising your own profile. Are people aware of what you're doing? Kind of, they stumble across you, they might find you, they might see what you're up to. And then linked again, the converse, finding people to connect to, just because it's sometimes useful to extend your network. And we can come back to this about sort of the value of having a broad network, as against being more selective. I find LinkedIn is fairly good at kind of maintaining relationships, because one of the challenges that you've got with any network is that people change jobs, they may move around, and time passes, and LinkedIn does kind of prompt you to say, oh, someone's just changed the job, and then you can kind of say, oh, let's have a catch up, let's keep in touch or something. It's quite a good, quite helpful sort of prompt for that. I use it a lot for searching for an individual, or searching for a suitable person within an organization. I've done a lot of that through the MECS work, and through other projects where I'm trying to find someone in a company that I can talk to about something, or I'm looking for, I'm going on a panel discussion tomorrow, and I want to find a bit of background about the other panelists, so I can search for them on LinkedIn. Sometimes you maybe wanted to search for some expertise, and you want to find someone who's an expert in something. I don't find LinkedIn so good for that. And then getting to know people's background and sort of where they're coming from, I find that very helpful. If I'm having a meeting with someone, I kind of see what their sort of career has looked like and what their original domain of study was. And then just communicating, sort of sending, receiving messages, etc. Can be useful for that. Communicating with individuals, or sort of having a kind of group thing going. But the issues are, the challenges, I say, overwhelmed with content. There's so many people out there. How do you select? There's so many different platforms. And this thing about sort of personal and professional spheres. You don't always want your boss to see what you were doing on Saturday night, that sort of thing. And how do you get your post noticed, in amongst all this? So this is me. So yeah, so kind of, does that resonate again with people's use of the uses they make of social media? Are there other things that you try to do, or that you find you can do through social media? I gather people are making comments, so I need to kind of look at the comment thing.
Yeah, everybody's welcome to unmute. It's supposed to be an interactive session, so just unmute yourself and just share. But yeah, for me, a lot of what you've stated resonates with me. LinkedIn, I have used in the past to get access to people. Typically, people I don't know. So in Ghana, if you want to go see some big boss, you have to probably deal with your secretary and loads and lots of bureaucracy. But I realized that once I found the person on LinkedIn, the person could actually say, oh, come to my office tomorrow, or something of the sort. So I found it very handy in connecting with people. And recently I have been using it to kind of look at the profiles of people whose current profiles fit what I want for the future. So I go look like, okay, so this person worked in this capacity, but what are the qualifications they have? So it helps me see what it takes to get into that position. That will be for me. Anyone else can take over from me. It's meant to be interactive anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you both paid up members on LinkedIn, or just a standard freebie?
No, I don't use the premium. I did at one point have a go on it, but I just found it wasn't adding any additional value. I get 99% of what I want without having to pay for it.
That's interesting. I don't pay either, and the thing I suppose I get most often is the notification that a dozen people have looked at my profile each week, and I have a quick sneak to see who they are, but a lot of them are not accessible unless I pay for the premium, at which point I think, well, if they really wanted to talk to me, they would, so I'm not that bothered. But
yes.
You have to couch this all in the frame that I'm fairly antisocial, generally speaking.
I find it intriguing when you do get that notification that someone has looked at your profile. It just make you wonder what was the thinking behind it, particularly if it's someone that you know. You think, why were they looking at my profile? That's interesting. Kind of you don't get that on other platforms, as far as I know. The sort of, if I look at someone else's Facebook page, other people don't know that I've looked at their Facebook page. It kind of, I find it fascinating. But yeah, sometimes you can kind of see, oh, I see, right, because they're just about to do something or whatever.
I generally, the ones that I can see, I'm assuming that they're searching for people, headhunting, and they'll have picked up on something in my fairly comprehensive CV that I've got on there, and then decided they didn't like me after all and gone elsewhere, which is fine.
Yes. Okay. Anyone else got any experiences of other platforms, maybe? Does anyone use something instead of LinkedIn for the kind of professional conversations? I don't know if people have a more academic focus.
Yeah, Melinda has her hand up. Melinda, go ahead.
Yeah, go on.
Hi there. I was just thinking as Nick was talking, something else that I've come across, which actually incidentally started off of a LinkedIn connection, is Lunch Club. And I'm not sure if any of you are aware of it, but I found some interesting connections through there, where it's a very strange system, but LinkedIn, you join Lunch Club and then you end up being paired with people who you can learn from or who are in similar industries or sectors, and you just have a lunchtime chat with them. And I've met some really interesting people who've actually directed me to some interesting reports for work. So that's been one. Another one is Clubhouse, which is a different platform. It's only voice interactive. You can't video call people, you can't text people, but it's interesting in terms of a learning platform for listening in to conversations that are happening around the world. And then, yeah, as I've said on the chat, I use different platforms for research purposes.
Yeah, I'm just having a look. I think it'd be useful to put those particular ones onto the chat, because I have heard of them before, but I've never sort of followed up. Lunch Club and what was the other one you said?
Yeah, I'll put them in the chat, Nick.
Yeah, thanks. Good. Anyone else want to? I'm looking. Long Sang, you came back. You said you mainly use. What do you use Twitter for, Long Sang?
Yeah, mostly the things that you had already outlined. I think I found some really good events via Twitter. So I've actually unsubscribed from some of the newsletters that I used to subscribe to via email and just rely on Twitter to bring to my attention the things that are most relevant. So I don't have to spend as long, thinking about different events. They tend to bubble up to the top of my list.
But you have some good filtering then in Twitter, because I've never got my head around how you cut through all the.
I guess it's the people that I'm following on Twitter might all promote the same event, and then I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I need to look at this. And the other great thing is that some people whom I've been in touch with via social media platforms, if I'm at an event, then they tend to come over and say hello. So it's, led to actual conversations. And sometimes that happens on webinars as well, because there's that chat function where you can, just keep the relationship warm, I suppose, with people that you know or have just been in touch with, and just say hello, which I find quite nice.
Okay, good. And the thing that you talked about, kind of messaging, I discovered recently that when I was representing a bunch of companies in discussions with the Food Standards Agency, and they said they wanted it to be just between me and them, so just myself and the Food Standards Agency, but I wanted to allow the companies to hear what was going on and to feed ideas and comments and questions for me. And so I used WhatsApp group so that people could listen to the Zoom discussion, but they weren't allowed to speak. But then on the WhatsApp group, they could all comment and discuss. So sometimes you can kind of combine these things in creative ways. Whoops, yeah. So this is my little. Sorry, yeah.
Oh, I was just going to reinforce the use of WhatsApp group as a side discussion. So often I'm listening to a webinar, and I know other people are. Matt Leach is particularly one who. And then we're just making comments to each other on the WhatsApp group, the Gamos WhatsApp group. And then a quick anecdote is I concluded some research in Uganda with some municipalities about 4 years ago now. And we asked them how to disseminate the research. And we were expecting responses like, create a briefing note or produce a paper, and they said, put it on the WhatsApp group. And I was like, and I hadn't realized at that point that WhatsApp could do groups, and yet they had a municipality group with over 70 members who were staff for Kasese, which is in the back end of Uganda, and they did all their management through that WhatsApp group. So the mayor would come on and say, I passed the market the other day and it was terrible. Get Willie to go down there and clear it. And I asked to be put on the group, and I was on it for about 2 years just to observe what they did. And there was one occasion where somebody posted pornography, and the mayor was on it like a shot and said, this is not appropriate, this is a professional group. And it was fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And then after 2 years, they realized I wasn't a staff member of Kasese municipality and threw me off.
Yes, again, and WhatsApp groups can be overwhelming if there's a sort of large number of people, a lot of traffic, but you can mute them, can't you, for a period if you don't want to be notified of updates and posts. Mel, again, you wanted to come in?
Sorry, Nick, yes, just to, if I'm allowed to interject, because WhatsApp groups be up to 256 participants on a group, they've also included new mechanisms to control who can post. So now admins have more sort of restrictions. They can mute, sort of act like there's an informal moderation that they've also introduced, which is quite useful when you're on these kinds of groups, and to control traffic as it works, which is interesting. Just a little extra there.
Okay, I didn't know that. My wife and I moderate a number of Facebook groups, and that can get quite heated at times. We've got some community groups which get a lot of quite vocal interactions at times, and definitely need to step in.
We'll probably send something in as well. So, Will, do you want to unmute yourself and speak, or would you rather read?
Well, all right.
So Will is saying that Malawi has a thriving WhatsApp group for RE organizations, academia, and government officials. It's probably by far the most used platform for this stuff. They are at capacity for group members and have to kick people out in order to get new people in, like what they did to Simon, perhaps. Right.
And I think, yes, I was going to say that what is pretty clear when you're talking about these things is different locations will have different cultures and different practices. In China uses WeChat a lot. Interestingly, we've got a couple of Airbnb guests in our house from Hong Kong, and I said, are you on WeChat? And they says, no, we use WhatsApp. I think Hong Kong sees WeChat as being rather China dominated and not something they want to get into. But yeah, I guess it's a question to ask, isn't it? When you're going into a new location, what are the forms of communication and social media that people do use? And the thing that again, is it Bridget was saying about using it to kind of cut through the bureaucracy and reach out to someone? Certainly, WeChat users in China will use it both for sort of personal interactions and for professional, and that's quite interesting because again, you can kind of get a quick message going to someone who's quite high up, which otherwise you'd have to kind of go through a lot of layers of bureaucracy otherwise. Okay, yeah, so I won't spend too much time on this, but I just wanted to say again, different things have different strengths. Again, people might have different views. And for those who do use LinkedIn, and I tend to, when I'm thinking about this, I think I use it a lot for searching for people or searching. And I've been, over the last couple of years on MECS, I've been doing a lot of work trying to track down someone in Philips or in Group SED or whatever. And that does generate a lot of leads. You don't always get through to someone and you can't tell who is an active user of LinkedIn. Some people don't look at their LinkedIn account for months on end, but you can often find someone who then introduce you to someone else or they give you an email address or something. Because it's one of these things that's got a lot of sort of the bulk of people use it. And I do use it for maintaining relationships. Again, I'll show a bit of examples of that. Okay, well, let's talk a bit more about my experience of LinkedIn. So this is me on LinkedIn. That is one of the most delicious Chinese meals I've ever had in the rural area of China. I thought that would be a nice thing to have as a picture. If you have multiple identities, you have to select or identify which one you want. So this one focuses on me as unconventional connections rather than me in MECS. But yeah, I think the choice of photos, again, is an interesting one. It does seem to be people use the photos and the images in very different ways. This is my kind of showing off how many connections I've got, very close to 3,000. And I do actively add connections. If I kind of come across someone, I'll try to make a point of finding them on LinkedIn, connecting with them. If I'm going to be meeting someone or if I know there's someone going to be at an event, look them up, connect with them. And that does give you both a little bit of knowledge about them and their background and an opportunity to contact them. So the connections are really valuable. And I've time and again sort of fallen back on, I think I know someone there, or I think I know someone who knows someone. And that proves really helpful. I don't know if 2,958 is impressive. Do other people have very large numbers of connections on their various platforms? How do you want to boast about their number of connections, or do they not see that as a mark of success? Nope, no response to that. Okay.
Well, I haven't. I think I'm quite close to 2,000, and this brings quite an interesting question. I have requests sitting in there from a lot of people, and people go like, is LinkedIn like Facebook where you get to choose, or you just add everyone? So you can answer that, and then Karen has her hand up.
Yeah. And Simon says he doesn't have too much. Karen.
No, I just wanted to say that for me it has been always like very difficult to maintain my page, and I don't really actively make my like actualizations and everything. And just recently when joining MECS, because I noticed that a lot of people was paying attention and asking me to join to connect, then I started to pay attention. I have to do a lot of work, putting more more information about what I am doing and everything. But I think that it depends a lot in what are you working on and what are you looking for with these connections. Because for me, it is still difficult to see the point, and it sometimes some people will look for you, and if you are not actively entering your page and everything, sometimes you just miss that.
Yeah, I think what would you use, Karen, to I guess it's a question, what works better? I'm wondering whether you're more interested in academic networking and whether you do it through sort of the publications route, as it were, like ResearchGate or something like that.
Well, yes, actually, yes. I usually find out a lot of interesting publications and everything through ResearchGate and that sort of pages, and that I am subscribed on the internet. And I am in some groups of that share their information by email. Then I receive like 1 or 2 emails every day from each one of those groups. Then for me, the internet the email is like a way to connect. But
Yes.
maybe I know that I'm not doing well on that regard. That's why I was very interested in hearing from you, because I can tell that you are doing a lot of interesting networking through the social media.
I think, yeah, it's interesting. I'm on various newsletter mailing lists as well, and I guess that is another form of social media. I hadn't considered it in the same way, but it certainly is a way of keeping in touch with developments and spotting things and getting the kind of stimulation. I guess I do use a lot of interpersonal connections to progress what I'm doing. Maybe I'll come on to kind of the next couple of slides illustrating that. So, and I don't particularly think of LinkedIn as a messaging platform, but once I've got connections, it opens up just short exchanges, I find, and then we'll kind of exchange email addresses and move into other things. So the top, you've got this guy, Raj Sivalingam, who is recently appointed head of Spectrum Governance and International at the Department for Culture, Media and Sport. So you get prompted in LinkedIn to say someone's announced they've got a new job, and so you get encouraged to send them a little congrats message, which can be fairly kind of mundane, or you can say, let's reconnect, let's have a chat. We've been doing some interesting work. So it's kind of in consultancy terms, it's a good way of kind of doing things. And then further down, you see Carl Sample, who's a guy who I knew when I was working in Sheffield City region. He's now working at the Catapult, and he posted something which Gemma, just above, had posted. She was looking for some speakers who understand about climate change, practical actions in Africa, and he thought I might have something to offer. So I connected with her, and we're now talking about that. Stuart Fenton, yeah. So kind of you get kind of introductions to people, and it kind of starts something, and then typically it goes off into a better platform for more substantial communications. But I guess I have found that the volume isn't a problem. I don't sort of treat everybody's post with great interest. This is the sort of notifications you get on LinkedIn. So I posted something about the webinars that we're running on as part of the MECS program, and then I get to see who has kind of reacted to that post, who seems to be interested in it. But a lot of the time, there's stuff on these notifications which I don't read. I just sort of scan down it. It's fairly, to my mind, fairly efficient. But it gives you a sense of kind of things that are coming up, and you can again spot someone that's announcing something or changing, or even their birthday. It can be a prompt to sort of say, oh yeah, we've not spoken for a while, let's get back in touch. So how do other people network? Nigel's already admitted that he's not terribly sociable, but you must still have people that you like to keep in touch with, or that you want to kind of occasionally be able to get in touch with if you need something. How does that work for you guys? Nigel.
Yeah, well, yes, I'm feeling guilty. So I do use LinkedIn more as a professional address book because, as you said, people move around, change jobs, and trying to keep the old paper address book up to date was well, useful for Christmas cards, but I never really sent those to business colleagues. Yeah, I've forgotten what I was going to say now, so I'll mute again. Somebody else jump in.
Okay. Mel's talking about on how she uses Twitter. Oh, what have we got here?
Don't mind me, Nick. That's a very large one, but what Simon just posted. So
okay.
Yeah.
So Mel's talking about how she promotes events or developments on Twitter. But I just, before we kind of maybe move into that, what do other people do kind of maintaining their networks? How do you do that? Any tips, Bridget?
I think usually, yeah, you do the congratulations and stuff like that when, I mean, you care enough. But if you do make a very valuable connection, I realize that it usually moves off LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Yes,
it's not very easy for that sort of thing, and you don't get notifications or not ideal. Anyone else commenting on how they sort of use LinkedIn to maintain their networks or other ways of doing it? I guess WhatsApp is another way. You've got, I'm in dozens of WhatsApp groups now, which gets a bit bewildering as well. Yeah, Longsang?
Yeah, I think networking is also about making yourself useful to others. So I'll often, listen to what someone has to say and go, I'll see who I can find for you on LinkedIn, see who is now working in this area, and I'll try to introduce them. And I benefited from the other side as well, where people have, noticed that what I'm doing is quite relevant to someone else that they know, and they've, sought us both out to introduce us as well. So that's great.
Definitely, yes. I think that's right. That kind of being useful is part of kind of how you maintain the relevance of what your connection, as well as it being very pleasant often. And it's nice to feel useful. Okay, so how do other people promote things then? So Mel's talked about how she uses Twitter and she relies on things that are retweeted, so it reaches thousands. Mel, can you say a bit more about that? How you kind of make it clever enough to get retweeted? What does that mean?
Sorry, Nick, that's actually Simon who was responding to me and he tagged me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
No, sorry. I would love to give input, but it would be useless from me. Sorry. Yeah.
All right. Is Simon still there or has he left? Not seeing him. Oh, he says he's got to go. All right. So we lost Simon. Okay. Is anyone else a Twitter expert? I'm sure Joni and Shukri are. I don't think they're on the line. How do you get a Twitter feed that then is amplified? No answers there. And one thing that we were looking at, and this isn't again to do with MECS, but possibly relevant, is there are agencies that have micro influencers, and some of you may know this already, but I didn't until recently. And the concept is that if you're promoting some new product or some new, mainly product, but other things can be done as well, you send out them to 100 micro-influencers, and these micro-influencers all have thousands of followers. And this can work well on things like Instagram, where there's a very sort of visual aspect to it. And then they can film themselves experiencing the product, opening it, seeing what it's like, commenting on it. And because of their reach, and because you can then get sort of tagged and multiple tagged, then it can reach a very wide audience and get very high levels of impact. So that the concept of sort of working through micro-influencer agencies, if you're in that sort of aspect of work where you're trying to push something out there, I don't know if Draconian Magic uses any of that kind of thing. But Karen, you wanted to comment?
Yes, and I just wanted to say that I think that the Twitter, in particular, it is a very good way of communicating messages, and I think that MECS should do better on Twitter. I know that from time to time that there are some messages shared by the communication team. But I think that, like, for example, when I was working for WHO, there was like always a very active participation from the comms teams in Twitter, and they will be asking all the time to the different people in the organization that about what they are doing, and if you were about to participate in a meeting, they will made a Twitter about it, and then everybody was encouraged to retweet and everything. And I think that it can be very powerful if you want to get attention, and that we should be trying to do something more in a coordinated way as MECS.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's a topic for a further discussion. I think certainly it can be very powerful. What was I going to say? Yes, and I think the thing is, it feels like you're feeding a beast. You have to keep the flow, don't you? You can't just do it once and then think, right, that's it.
Exactly, that's it. And some people have already a lot of followers, and others don't. But the important thing is to find like a very good rhythm of sharing news, because as you said, it needs to be somebody really reaching out to everybody to try to have interesting things to share all the time.
Yeah.
Mm.
And talking about the power of Twitter, I think earlier on, Maureen had shared that these days, if you do want to reach out to very big corporations, you do get a lot of, you get response quickly from Twitter, because no company wants a bad reputation. So they are very fast there, because Twitter is like news spreads like wildfire. So if you're a company and you want to maintain your corporate image, you really don't want your customers just going there to say anything. So yeah, if you do want responses from very big corporations, you typically wouldn't have gotten a response from. Yeah.
It's a good point. So their official Twitter feed or Twitter account is something that they won't ignore, and they will have paid people to handle the correspondence. So yeah, that sounds like a good tip. I wonder if you wouldn't use that to kind of get through to them and say, I want to talk to your MD or something, would you? It's more if you want to kind of comment on them in a public way, in a way which will get them to then respond, I'm guessing.
Yeah,
not
exactly so.
Okay. Good. Okay. I've got a message from Nigel rather. 1,400 Twitter followers. I suspect there's some that have a lot more. Okay. And I'm kind of coming to the end of what I had to say. The other thing, I guess, is just to again flag up that LinkedIn has some pretty good search tools. I find it again, the searching on each platform is kind of idiosyncratic to the platform, and it's not always easy. But LinkedIn, you can search on as much of a name as you know, and then any other terms that might narrow the field. So if you're looking at a fairly common name like Chris Moore, you can narrow it down. Whoops. But again, it's taken me a little while to get a handle on this. So I should stop screaming. That's just making everyone confused. But how do other people go about finding people? If you're looking to make contact with someone that you either know by name or that you want to find the head of a certain organization, what do you find is the best way to do that?
I Googled them. I Googled them.
Right, okay. And then where does that take you? To their organization website, you mean, or?
Yes, or just, usually you know the organization already, but if you don't, then or sometimes because they changed work, then you know what they are doing, what is the last thing they are into sometimes.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, and Nick, sometimes you're not looking for someone in particular, but you're looking for who the head is. So usually I would probably go type in the company name and they'll be like, okay, 13 people work here. And then you click them and then you see everybody and then you see the head and the secretary and the deputy. And then you can connect with as many people as you can. And usually one of them, if you want to make a connection, one of them will probably get back to you. But the search function I found on LinkedIn is limited if you don't use the premium account. So if you're someone that does a lot of searching, if you do a couple, it's just going to say you've reached your limit.
All right. Okay. Yeah, I've not come across a limit, but I know what you mean. It's fairly basic. But I do quite like the sort of thing where you say you can find an organization, then you click on the people, and then you can to some extent narrow that down in terms of where they are or who they are a bit. But yeah, any other tips on searching for people?
It's Nigel again. I think if I was searching for an academic, I would probably look on ResearchGate for one thing. I mean, that's a fairly dormant kind of platform, although there are people who have conversations on there. But also, I would go to the institution. I think I was checking out Mariana recently when she joined the program, and went back to whichever university she's at. I can't remember. It's obviously Loughborough now, but still sits there. Yeah, so academically, I would use those two platforms probably rather than LinkedIn. For professionals, I'd probably Google it. I was trying to find out something about the amount of balsa wood used in wind turbine blades not so long ago. And we've got a blade manufacturing facility on Humberside, I think. So I wanted somebody to point somebody else at to go and find out the information for themselves, or to. I think there were some images that would be too small to appear in print, and so I pointed them at this person who seemed to be the project manager, just from some local news thing that came up on Google.
Yes, I guess Google is a kind of meta social media platform, if you like, because you're effectively searching at all of them at once, aren't you?
The problem is, of course, their search engines look for the most popular thing first, which isn't. It's not a proper search engine in the way that you would go about it in, say, in the library search function, looking for a particular subject matter. I must admit, I find it fairly irritating, especially the adverts. So the first page you can almost flick over if you're trying to find something substantial. But I use Bing anyway.
Bing, right.
Yeah, I suppose that's a personal foible, trying not to have anything to do with the mega rich people in the world.
I was just going to say that a lot of these things have become monopolized, haven't they? Whether it's LinkedIn, Facebook, or the other major platforms. And they kind of obviously benefit from the fact that just about everyone is on them. So if you want someone, the chances are that you'll find them there. But yes, it grates a bit.
But they've become politicized as well, haven't they? Because was it the Americans kicked out TikTok, or one of them?
Yes. Trump wasn't too happy about them.
Longsang has his hand up.
Sorry, Longsang.
Yeah, I dropped into the chat box a link for the Low Carbon Energy for Development Network, or the LCEDN Experts database. And this is where people have signed up specifically, happy to be contacted about, renewable energy in their country or a particular technology. And I find that quite helpful when I'm not really looking for someone in a particular organization, but maybe I'm looking to connect with people for a particular project in a region, and like to find, some experts. And I think that's a really good starting point. And that has a link to their LinkedIn profile. And then that's a good starting point as well for further, contacts and things. So I just wanted to draw your attention to that. And maybe people on this call would also like to add themselves to that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I didn't know about that. I'm just on it now. Looks very useful. So technologies of interest and then research topic. I see. Okay. Yeah. Yes, I think if you know of a particular platform that will narrow the field and give you the best chance of getting the success rate you're looking for, then that's clearly valuable. And there are various organizations that have done sort of landscape mapping exercises and kind of created a whole database on the back of this. Maybe that's another resource that we could be sharing amongst ourselves in the way that Longseng has.
Yeah. Okay, right. It's been such an interesting session. I must say that I found about the MECS job I have now through Longseng on Twitter.
Right. Okay.
Right. Okay. So thanks, Nick. I think this has been a very interactive session, quite enjoyable. And I think we should probably plan for a 2.0 and delve into the issues a lot more. So thank you, Nick, for sharing your experiences and everyone that shared their experiences with us. Before we all sign off, I'd like to draw your attention to the webinar happening now, which is the Transitioning to Clean Cooking webinar series organized by the Clean Cooking Alliance. I have put the link to registration in the chat box, but it will focus on the latest SDG tracking report and then zoom into a discussion about the different pathways to accelerating clean cooking as we all gear up towards the different UN high-level dialogues and the COP26. So thank you all for coming and staying till the end. I really enjoyed the session and I really hope you did too. Hopefully, no, definitely. We'll see you in 2 weeks for another informative session. I'll be sending around the video and everything and the details for the next session. So for now, bye-bye and see you at the next webinar if you're going to be there or in the next 2 weeks. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.